Wall, about half a mile up the river here. It forced the water around an island. Those trees just beyond the docks, that's actually an island that we also own that is part of the marina. And the water came around the island and then came through some old gates that were built about 1880. And all of this canal, where y'all were eating, there was water on the other side. That's called a head race. And the old textile mill was in the middle of the parking lot. And then the water, after it went through the water wheel, it discharged into another canal that is called a Tailrace. And that's where the name of the marina actually comes from. If you looked at some maps of the Charlotte area that were dated early 1700s, 1800s, you would see that there was a road that came out of what they called Charlottetown, and today it is Trade or Trine. I guess it's Trine, but anyway, West Trade Street, and if you followed West Trade, it turned into Tuckasegee Road, and the road that you drove in on is also Tuckasegee. Interestingly, it is spelled differently in Gaston County than it is spelled in Mecklenburg County, but it's the same road, and it actually crossed this river right at this location in what was called the Tuckasegee Ford. And this was the old Indian trading route where the Catawba Indians would bring their furs from the mountains, and they would bring them to Charlottetown to actually trade. And that's why the Tuckasegee Road turned into Trade Street, because that was the trading street where the Indians brought their goods. And the Tuckasegee Ford and the Tuckasegee Trail came right across this property. So it's a very old historic part of North Carolina history. This is the island, and these are the old gates that were built about 1880.
It's high water now, right?
It's what?
The water's pretty high.
Oh, it's very high.
Oh, yeah.
It's just about a foot from
So
full.
you'd see more of them.
About a foot from full pool. The gates themselves are not here, but the old concrete works that throttled the water into the head race going to the textile mill, the old concrete works are still here. So this is a 4.5 acre island. We haven't decided what we're going to do with it yet. We may build a little cabin on it and call it retirement. What we're going to do is what I'm going to do is take you up the island, and you see this is a canal. This was probably dug by slaves. There were no machines in the 1870s and 1880s in this part of the South, and certainly no cranes. So this was probably all dug by hand.
So it always has been a river. It's not just because of Duke Energy.
It's always been a river.
I've always been a river.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
It's one of the main, and in fact, the reason
The
that
river came first, then Duke Energy.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, Lake Norman was not Lake Norman. No, it was Catawba River.
yeah, and the reason they built Lake Norman was in situations like this week where there was so much rain.
Yeah.
We went to full pool here. They pulled the lake down about a foot since yesterday. But when Lake Norman wasn't here, all of this water came rushing down the river
Right.
and flooded South Carolina.
Oh.
Because North Carolina's got a fair bit of fall to it.
Yeah.
There's about 80 feet of difference between Lake Norman and this Lake Wiley right here. But you get into South Carolina, it's very flat. So they didn't have a way to really get rid of that water down to the ocean. This is actually, the Catawba River actually empties into the Atlantic around Georgetown, South Carolina. But this is what they call the environmental area of the river district of Lake Wiley. And we've got kayaks that we rent. We have about 80 kayaks, and people come out all the time just to enjoy the environment, and it's really pretty.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to take you up, show you the island a little bit, then I'm going to turn you around, and we're going to go right past the Whitewater Center. They have a bunch of kayaks also, and they have a dock. We're going to go around this island that's behind us, which is Sadler Island, and then we'll. Half of it is in Mecklenburg County, half of it is in Gaston County, and it is owned by Duke Power. When Duke bought the rights to flood this land, they bought everything above a certain elevation. The elevation on this body of water is 570, actually 569.7 or something like that, feet above sea level. Everything above that, or everything below that, Duke Power bought. But if you had a body of water that was within that perimeter, like an island, Duke Power also bought the island. So there were only two islands from Hickory, North Carolina, to the South Carolina line. There are only two islands that were privately owned. Duke Power owns them all. And those two islands, one was up in the town of Mambo, which is north end of Lake Norman, where there was an old textile mill. We built a marina up there for a developer probably 30 years ago. And that's at Windermere. Windermere Island, they developed into beautiful home sites, and there's $1 million bridge going over to it. Really, really special.
Yeah, I think I know where it is.
But the reason that was available for development is the same reason that we own this island. There was an old textile mill that actually owned the island. And Duke didn't want to buy the textile mill. They didn't want the liability of that. So they didn't buy it, and the island became available for development. They didn't want to buy this mill. This mill was built in 1880. They rented it until 1960, and they tore it down in 1980. It was 100 years old when they tore it down. But during that period of time, Duke Power had bought the rights to Lake Wylie around the turn of the century. That's actually what turned the area, what electrified this area. Duke Power built a dam about 1906 to flood, to contain what became Lake Wylie. And that dam had a hydro on it. They started to generate electricity, so converted to electricity. And I think the Kannapolis area with the Cannon family.
Yeah, the Cannon, right.
Well, just north of there, on the Yadkin River, the Yadkin PD, the Yadkin River comes out of Winston-Salem down through Lexington and on down through Baden. They had textile mills on that body of water also. I mean, that's all you had. If you had good running water, I mean, look what the Dutch did with wind power.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the same thing. They had plenty of wind, and we have plenty of water. So people use what they have.
Older than time, obviously. So.
We were hired. My company designed and built marinas.
Okay.
We did that for 45 years. We've got marinas all over the southeast, all over North Carolina.
Right.
I mean, we were pretty good at what we did.
Yeah.
A little niche. So this was a developer that built homes, and there's some of the homes that he built.
Yeah.
And he had all this waterfront, but he didn't know what to do with it. So he hired us to design and get permitted so he could put these docks in.
Yeah.
Well, after it took almost 10 years to get it permitted.
I believe.
And
Wow.
after we got it permitted, he got in financial trouble and he filed bankruptcy. And the bank was holding about $500,000 worth of paper on this tract of land that was at the water.
Yeah.
And the bank didn't know what to do with it. Because, I mean, it was just raw land. There wasn't a marina there, it was just dirt.
Right. Right.
But I knew what it was worth.
Oh yeah.
Because that was my business. I said, so
Oh, wonderful.
the bank took a haircut for $200,000, and I got a loan and went ahead and built the Marina. Finished it in 2007, just in time for the recession.
Yes.
That in my business was a depression. I mean,
wow,
when
yes.
people are about to lose their homes, they're not going to go buy a boat.
Oh, yeah.
So the marine business really took it on the chin. So we looked at red ink here for about 10 years until the economy came back and we got the Marina full. And that's when I met Innika, and we got married in that period of time. And then she started planting flowers. You know, these Dutch women, I like flowers. She started making tulips. We don't have any tulips yet, but she was talking about that just yesterday. So next year she'll probably have some. But we sold the land for the restaurant, which is actually quite good, and the condominiums, the apartments that are up there. We sold that to a developer because I didn't really know how to do that. I mean, I'd been around developers all my life, but I knew waterfront development. I didn't know how to go vertical to the building. So he bought it and put in a very good restaurant, waterfront restaurant. Moderately priced, a lot of food, good food. It's really pretty lucky that we got a good company in there doing it. And this is what we call retirement. I mean, you know, we got 200
Wonderful,
slips.
wonderful.
She runs the company and she gives me a list. And I tell you something, guys, I was my own boss for 45 years. And then I retired, and now I got a Dutch woman for a boss.
And now you're being bossed around now.
I'll tell you something. You talk about a culture shock. It's different.
So how did you all met?
We met through Rotary. I was the district governor in the Charlotte area, and she was running the Valentine Rotary Club. She was the president of the Valentine Club,
Right.
and she was very, very good. But she had her own hard-headed agenda, and as district governor, I was supposed to do what the national organization, the Rotary clubs, wanted me to do.
I know those Rotary clubs. I've been
And
to some of those.
I had this Dutch gal running this Rotary club, and she had her own agenda, and she was hard-headed about it.
Stubborn.
Yeah, they tend to be a bit stubborn. So anyway, so I spent a lot of time with her, trying to straighten her out, and she straightened me out. But we liked each other. We were both single at the time,
Wonderful.
and we got